I've worked in a number of different market units for SAP, but most recently now here as leading the HR function for our organization. I'm going to talk a bit about technology, but maybe not to disappoint you. I'm going to talk more about the impact on businesses and what that means. And I'll be going through a bit of some insights that I see in the market from a trend perspective, share with you some examples of what we see from customers, as well as what we're doing internally as SAP around transformation. A couple of trends that we're seeing from a digital perspective is the whole topic of connectivity. And maybe just to give you a number, 2.5 billion by 2020. That is the number of individuals that will be connected on social or business networks by 2020. So what that creates is, the immediacy, the connectedness with people globally, but also as you see from your various news feeds, Twitter feeds, Facebook feeds, how fast information travels around. Now, whether it's quality information, that's a different question, but in terms of how fast things travel around the world. The other topic that's been pretty much talked quite a bit about in the last bit is around machine learning, Internet of Things. And maybe to make it a little bit more real for you what that means, I'll give you another number, 75 billion. That is the number of connected sensors that will be in the world in 2020. The last element around high-performance computing, you've had a lot of speakers already before me talk about technology, software as a service, moving to the cloud. Again, what really is the difference for many of us nowadays, whether it's things like Flipkart, I'm sure I'm omitting some of the other businesses, Snapdeal and so on, Uber and so on, those types of businesses are really upending traditional business models. So this is all coming together to really change how do we respond to our customers and what kinds of things do we need to do as a business. Maybe just a couple of stats to share with you, and you did ask for my view on India. I'll give you a little bit of it. I by no means am any expert, and I know that there's not one India as I continue to learn every day. But a couple of things that we see here in terms of smartphone usage. Actually, India consumers are twice as likely to purchase via their smartphones than consumers in the US, UK, and Germany. So actually, we're pretty advanced here in this market unit as opposed to when we think of mature market units like in Europe and North America as an example. Digital data is growing. So the amount of monthly digital data by next year that will be generated in India is 900 petabytes. Now, I had to look that up, what that actually meant, and to maybe give you a feel for the size of that, 50 petabytes is the amount of the written word in all languages since the beginning of time to today. So the amount of data that's going to be driven over mobile data traffic is going to be 18 times that every month. And I'll come back to the topic of complexity in a moment. And then I probably am not the expert here to talk about e-commerce, but those factors are really driving this kind of economy, or it is one of the more fastest growing countries with the e-commerce market for consumers. And I think with the combination of all of that, it really allows companies to be able to customize their experience for the individual. So it's no longer business to business, but business directly to consumer, because they have the technologies in front of them. We can reach out to them. You can use data and analytics to be able to say, other customers did this, maybe you might want to look at that, or how you express different kinds of information to them. So the question I have is, what does being digital or digitalization mean to your business? This was a question posed by Accenture to respondents, and respondents, the majority of them, 77% of them, indicated mobility was what digitalization means. And here nobody said that, so good answer. But in terms of the respondents, 22% of them said replacing business processes with digitally enabled processes. And what that speaks to me, and I see we have a bit of a difference also, the majority of people answered to the bottommost answer there. Many people think about digitalization or transforming businesses as, let's introduce an app. Let's transfer something from a paper-based process to an online process. And I'm oversimplifying it, but I do believe that there's a misnomer in terms of what digital transformation can mean to businesses. And it is, how do you reimagine the way you work? How do you reimagine your business model? How do you reimagine your processes? So I'd like to share with you a couple of examples to illustrate what I mean. Does anybody know Under Armour? It has been a fitness kind of lifestyle company with branded clothing and things like that. And they are working with technology in an aspirational nature to actually be able to embed sensors in the clothing that they sell, be able to gather data on athletes as they're training, and be able to use analytics to be able to make recommendations to their training regimes. That's quite a different business model. So here's an example of a company that's embracing technology to reimagine how they engage with customers. Maybe another example, and you might know these guys, Asian Paints. Here's a company who's reimagining their business process. They've transformed the way they engage with customers, and now if you've been to some of their stores, you can actually go into the store, work on a computer, simulate your home, pick different colors with your layout, with your furniture to be able to see what works and be able to place the order right from there. They're really transforming the process and the way they engage with a customer from an end-to-end perspective. Another interesting fact that I heard and understand about Asian Paints is they're using analytics. How many other companies do that kind of value-add service? But there's also implications on work. And here's some themes that I've heard talked about in some previous sessions. 5 generations coming together, so I will not labor on some of these points that many of you have already heard. Digital natives, digital immigrants, and so on. And I think that has an implication then for digital transformation within companies of, we have colleagues coming into the organization that have a huge appetite and an expectation for a way of work, but also could be rubbing up a little bit with colleagues who could be potentially uncomfortable or not used to working that mode, and how do you kind of bridge the two? Organizational boundaries are blurring. In 2020, 40% of the workforce will be freelancers. I've also heard of platforms getting established in other countries where, if I have a piece of work, I'll post it on this platform and other people will bid on it to say, I can do that for you. I need something translated, I'm not fluent in German, who can do this for me? And so it's more of a piecemeal, flexible opportunity. There's potentially downsides and upsides to it, but that is the trend that's happening. Change is the new normal. Maybe that's a cliche, right? Maybe just a small example to illustrate. I didn't bring my phone up here because I didn't want it to interfere with the mic, but how often are you getting mobile app updates now? 2 weeks now. Used to be quarterly. Just imagine what our customers are expecting of us to do and how often we're supposed to be looking at their customer experience and changing and adapting to them. And then lastly, complexity. I do believe that that's a byproduct of all of this. While technology allows us to work across organizational boundaries, many of us, we may be focusing on India as a market unit. There's added complexity around globalized, boundaries in terms of legal environment, employment laws, how you do transactions, financials, and so on. That is something that's probably a new skill set many companies need to build as they choose to expand globally and be aware of that complexity. So let me share with you a couple of examples, what I've experienced at SAP around how we've tried to reimagine some of the aspects of how we work. In one of the previous roles I had at SAP, I actually worked with the CHRO in the office there. But what we've introduced in the last year is our SAP Digital Boardroom. And it's dramatically changed the way that team functions and works together. We actually have real-time data. So not data from a spreadsheet that's been pulled offline, printed out a week or two in advance and given in some pre-read. This has actually changed in terms of the accessibility, transparency to real-time data for our organization. We've eliminated paper. There are no more paper printouts. What also enables us is for our leaders to make informed decisions. And so it's dramatically changed how our team is working. And now we're looking at, we have introduced this for our HR leadership team and expanding that further in the organization to take that decision-making down even further into the organization. Predictive analytics. We've hired our first data scientist in HR. Bringing someone in with a data scientist background, that's pretty amazing. And so we brought this individual in, and we've got them working on a couple of projects. We are looking at how do we correlate our early talents coming into the organizations, and what are the factors that probably influence or correlate to the most successful ones. So I know in India, as I'm learning, we've got a tiering of our universities and colleges. That is probably one measure, but is that really the only indicator in terms of quality of hire? We are using predictive analytics more on qualitative data, analyzing word clouds, managers giving feedback to employees. If we're able to analyze that, does that really correlate to differentiated pay for performance? And then lastly, one of the probably more obvious ones is predictive analytics for predicting high risk of attrition. What are the factors that feed into that? Reimagining digital leadership, we really need our leaders to have a purpose, and their purpose is to lead and guide and coach and provide a line of sight to their teams and to engage them and motivate them. And so we are, with the help of technology, but for me the technology is more the enabler, it's not the solution. We are moving away from ratings, and I think there's many companies doing that, to more focusing on the continuous dialogue aspect. And how we're using mobile technology and a few other things to make that a little bit easier to capture the sentiments of those discussions, but more encouraging the behavioral change around connecting with folks, getting to know them as individuals, and what are their wishes and desires versus I just want to have a paycheck and move on, get home and type of thing. The last point that I wanted to highlight to you, as much as technology is pervasive and I think it's increasing, there are a few takeaways for me that I think do not change. I do believe there is a need for human touch. We are human beings. I think it's innate in each of us. And whether you use video or actually physically connect with someone, I don't think that will ever go away. Or if you eliminate it, I know I have 5 minutes, if you eliminate it, that's maybe a big concern. And so how do you leverage technology to create that touch? So how do we use video conferencing technology to create that touch? We expect our managers to create that touch and connection, as I already highlighted earlier, around the continuous dialogue approach. The other one is around lifelong learning. So, there is a fear with the increased technology, automation, jobs will go away. Actually, research shows that there will be more jobs tomorrow than there are today, but those will be different jobs. So the key for all of us is how are we continuously learning? So we're hiring a data scientist. I'm encouraging my team to learn and get used to doing analytics. And that's a different skill set than they're used to, and it's a new thing to learn. Or if you think about Under Armour, right? Going from an apparel company, design, fashion, right, to moving towards, smart technology embedded in clothing, can you imagine the kind of skills that they need within their organization as they transform? So I think that's a key element here around lifelong learning and how do we not resist, but potentially embrace the technology and open up new opportunities.